name is Lena Whitmore, 32 years old. I'm still trying to understand why calm came first instead of panic. Not the good kind of calm, the kind that settles after something inside you quietly breaks and decides it can't afford to scream yet. 5 years into my marriage with David, I thought I understood his mother, Eleanor. 60 years old, sharp smile, sharper memory when it came to everyone's mistakes but her own. She never yelled, never outright insulted me. That would have been too obvious. Eleanor specialized in paper cuts, tiny, deniable wounds delivered with a pleasant tone. She'd forget that I didn't eat certain foods and then sigh dramatically when I declined. She'd reminisce about David's exes in front of me, always ending with, "But that was a different time." She'd compliment my dress and then suggest a different color would suit our family better. 1,000 small ways of reminding me I was tolerated, not welcomed. David knew, or at least he knew something was wrong. He'd squeeze my hand under the table, roll his eyes when she wasn't looking, murmur, "That's just Mom." He believed endurance was the same as peace. Thanksgiving was at Eleanor's house that year, the kind of house designed to impress, polished wood, curated clutter, photos of family moments that looked happier than they felt. I volunteered to help in the kitchen, partly out of politeness, partly because standing still around Eleanor made my skin itch. She and her sister, Aunt Mildred, stepped out onto the back porch while I was rinsing vegetables. The kitchen window was cracked open, letting in cold air and the smell of damp leaves. I wasn't trying to listen. I swear that part is true. But when you hear your own name spoken in a certain tone, your body reacts before your conscience can intervene. "Are you sure about this, Ellie?" Mildred said. Her voice was lower than I expected, uneasy. "It's ruining everything," Eleanor replied. Not angry, resolved. David isn't himself. This family was fine before her. My hands froze in the sink. "A good strong dose in that weird cranberry stuff she insists on bringing," Eleanor continued, "and she'll be too sick to cause trouble for a while. Maybe she'll rethink things." The words didn't land all at once. They staggered into me, one by one, like bad news delivered by strangers. Mildred hesitated. "But what if someone else eats it? What if it's worse than you think?" Eleanor scoffed. "No one touches her gluten-free nonsense. And it's just a special recipe from an old gardening friend, guaranteed to clear you out. She'll think it's a stomach bug. Serves her right." "Clear you out?" They laughed. Soft, shared laughter. The kind between women who believed they were being practical. My blood went cold. Not hot anger, ice. I dried my hands on my jeans without realizing it, my fingers clumsy, numb. My phone was on the counter beside me. I picked it up, hit record, and held it there, praying my breathing wouldn't give me away. I caught the tail end of their conversation, the chuckles, the easy certainty that I was a problem to be solved. It wasn't a plan to kill me. That distinction mattered, somehow, like my mind was desperately searching for a version of this that didn't redefine everything. But they were talking about making me violently ill, intentionally, with something grown, brewed, prepared. I stood there long after they came back inside, my heart hammering so hard I was sure Eleanor could hear it. When she walked past me, she smiled, warm, maternal, asked if I needed help. I smiled back. Dinner passed in a blur of careful choices. I avoided the cranberry dish entirely, my appetite gone. Eleanor noticed, of course. She always noticed. Her eyes lingered on my plate a beat too long, then flicked away. David leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" "You're quiet." "Just tired," I said. It was the truth, just not the whole one. That night, the recording sat on my phone like a live wire. I listened to it again in the bathroom with the fan running, then again in bed while David slept beside me. His breathing steady, trusting. Each time, Eleanor's voice sounded calmer than I remembered. That was the worst part. This wasn't a slip, it was considered. I didn't tell David, not yet. I needed to think. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Confrontation felt dangerous, not physically in that moment, but strategically. Eleanor thrived on chaos she could deny. I needed proof, leverage, time. Meanwhile, she escalated. Little comments to David about how I was divisive. Suggestions that family dinners felt tense now. She floated the idea of another gathering the following week, a chance to clear the air. The phrase made my stomach twist. Clear the air. I realized then that Eleanor believed she was in control. She thought I was unaware, off balance, already half gone. She had no idea that every smile she gave me now felt like a confession. At night, I lay awake, replaying the moment on the porch. Not just what she said, but how easily she said it. How Mildred didn't argue the morality, only the risk. How comfortable Eleanor was, deciding what kind of suffering I deserved. This wasn't about dislike, or jealousy, or tradition. This was about erasing me without getting her hands dirty. And the most dangerous thing Eleanor had done, without knowing it, was assume I'd stay silent. The invitation came 3 days later. Eleanor called David directly, her voice syrupy enough that I could hear it from across the room. "I hate how things felt at Thanksgiving," she said. "I think we should all sit down, clear the air like adults." Clear the air again. She loved that phrase. David looked at me while she spoke, eyebrows raised in a silent question. I nodded slowly. Not because I wanted to go, but because I knew I had to. Silence had kept me safe so far, but silence wouldn't stop what came next. Eleanor's house was immaculate the night of the dinner, even more so than usual. Candles placed just so, soft music humming in the background, the table set for company, not comfort. Chloe, David's sister, was already there when we arrived, perched beside Eleanor like a loyal sentry. She greeted David warmly, hugged him a second too long, then turned to me with a thin smile that never reached her eyes. "Lena," she said, "good to see you." The tension was immediate, not explosive, compressed, like a storm sealed in glass. Dinner unfolded with pointed politeness. Eleanor asked David about work, about his childhood friends, about anything that didn't involve me. When she did speak to me, it was in veiled observations. "Some people don't grow up with big families," she mused at one point. "They don't always understand loyalty." Chloe nodded. "It's true. Family has to come first." David shifted in his seat, uncomfortable but quiet. That had always been his reflex. Wait it out. Let the moment pass. I watched him closely, memorizing the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes flicked toward me, searching for reassurance I wasn't sure I could give yet. Dessert came out. Eleanor didn't serve cranberry anything. That detail felt deliberate, like a taunt. As plates were set down, she finally looked at me directly. "Lena, dear," she said, folding her hands, "we need to talk." The room seemed to shrink. "I feel like ever since you came into David's life, this family has been strained," she continued. Her voice rose, just enough to draw attention. "Things that were once simple are complicated now." Chloe leaned in. "Mom's right. You can be very difficult." Every eye turned to me. The moment Eleanor had been engineering for years. I felt the weight of the recording in my pocket, the proof humming against my leg like a secret heartbeat. I took a breath. "Eleanor," I said evenly, "I hear that you're unhappy. You're allowed to feel that way." Her expression flickered, surprise, then annoyance. This wasn't the reaction she wanted. Before she could respond, I turned to David. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" He nodded immediately, relief and concern crossing his face. We stepped into the study and closed the door behind us. The room smelled like old books and polish, safe, enclosed. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Not really," I said. My hands were steady now, strangely. "There's something you need to hear." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. At first he frowned, confused. Then his brow furrowed as Eleanor's voice filled the room. By the time she said, "Clear you out," David's face had gone pale. He took the phone from my hand, replayed the last 30 seconds. Then again. "They were going to poison you," he said quietly. "Make me violently ill," I corrected, "with something from her garden." His hands shook. "That's not just Mom being Mom. That's criminal." We didn't argue. We didn't debate. When we walked back into the living room, something in David had hardened. Eleanor looked up, smiling, confident. "Mom," David said, his voice dangerously calm, "what exactly is your special recipe for clearing someone out?" Her smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "The one you and Aunt Mildred discussed on Thanksgiving," he continued, "for Lena's cranberry dish." The color drained from her face. "I don't recall," she said quickly. "We were joking." "Really?" I asked. "Because it didn't sound like a joke." David held up his phone. "I have a recording." Arthur's head snapped up. Chloe stared. Eleanor sputtered, indignant. "That's an invasion of privacy." "Listen," David said, pressing play. The room fell silent except for Eleanor's own voice condemning her. Arthur looked horrified. Chloe's mouth fell open. "I'm calling the police," David said. Eleanor laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "Don't be ridiculous." He did it anyway. When the officers arrived, Eleanor cycled through tears, rage, and victimhood. Chloe glared at me like I'd destroyed something sacred. The police didn't arrest her, but they listened. They warned her. They took the recording. As we left, Chloe shouted, "You're tearing this family apart!" David didn't look back. She threatened my wife. That night, I knew this wasn't over. Eleanor had lost control, and people like her never forgive that. The silence after that night didn't last. It took 3 days for Eleanor to change strategies, 3 days before she stopped trying to control the room and started trying to control the story. It began subtly. A cousin stopped replying to my messages. An aunt I'd once shared recipes with unfollowed me on social media. Then Chloe posted a vague status about toxic in-laws and people who weaponize victimhood to isolate others. No names, no specifics. Just enough for those who already doubted me to nod along. Eleanor, of course, remained publicly dignified. She didn't post. She didn't rant. She let Chloe do that work, amplifying the narrative while she played the wounded mother behind the scenes. Aunt Mildred backed her completely, telling anyone who would listen that it had all been dark humor taken out of context. David cut them off. Completely. No calls, no visits, no explanations. When Arthur tried to mediate, David told him there was nothing to discuss until Eleanor took responsibility. Arthur sounded tired, older. He wanted peace without accountability. David wanted safety. Then came the call from HR. I was at my desk when my manager asked me to step into a conference room. HR sat there with polite faces and a printed document, an anonymous complaint. It alleged I was emotionally unstable, prone to fabricating accusations, and creating hostile environments. My hands went cold in a way that felt familiar. They told me not to worry, for now. They knew my work. They'd document everything. But the message was clear. Someone was trying to dismantle my life, piece by piece. That night, I cried for the first time since Thanksgiving. Not loud, not dramatic, just the quiet, exhausted grief of realizing this wasn't about winning, it was about endurance. We called a lawyer the next morning. She listened carefully, reviewed the recording, the transcript, the timeline. "This is harassment," she said, "defamation, and potentially grounds for a restraining order if it escalates." So we escalated first. Cease and desist letters went out to Eleanor and Chloe. Formal, documented, calm in a way that felt almost surgical. They outlined the threats, the recording, the workplace complaint, and warned of legal consequences for further action. Eleanor left David a voicemail that night, tearful, rambling, furious. She claimed the recording was fake, edited, that I'd manipulated him. Chloe texted abuse nonstop, calling me a psycho, a gold digger, a liar. We saved everything. David spent nights researching Eleanor's gardening friends. Castor beans, oleander, plants that didn't always kill, but could devastate. The realization sat between us, heavy and undeniable. She hadn't wanted me gone forever, just gone enough. When I went to sleep, I locked the doors twice. When I went to work, I checked over my shoulder. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was protection. The cease and desist letters should have ended it. They didn't. 2 weeks later, Chloe violated it outright. She posted a long, emotional rant in a local community Facebook group, naming me this time. She accused me of destroying a family with lies, of manipulating the legal system, of being dangerous. Dozens of comments piled on before someone sent me the screenshot. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to our lawyer. Within hours, a formal legal notice went out demanding removal, a public retraction, and warning of a restraining order and defamation suit. The post vanished before midnight. No apology, no retraction, just silence. That silence was followed by court dates. The police investigation into the Thanksgiving incident didn't result in criminal charges. Proving intent to commit a felony, as opposed to causing severe illness, was a high bar without more evidence. Hearing that felt like swallowing sand. But the investigator was clear. The recording mattered. The pattern mattered. And in civil court, patterns speak loudly. We filed for a restraining order. Eleanor arrived in court, dressed in soft colors, clutching tissues, eyes red. She cried before anyone spoke. When it was her turn, she said she loved me like a daughter. That she'd been misunderstood, that this was all a terrible family joke blown out of proportion by a sensitive woman. Our lawyer didn't argue emotion. She presented facts. The recording transcript, the harassment timeline, the HR complaint, Chloe's messages, the social media posts. David testified calmly. No anger, no drama, just truth. When the judge played the recording aloud, Eleanor stared at the table. The ruling came swiftly. A 2-year restraining order against Eleanor and Chloe. No contact. 100 yards away from me. My home. My workplace. The judge cited lack of remorse and escalating behavior. Eleanor sobbed. Chloe glared. It didn't matter. After that, things unraveled for them quietly. Arthur apologized to us privately. Some relatives changed their tune once the order became public. Others disappeared. Aunt Mildred stayed loyal to Eleanor's isolation. The moment that stayed with me came months later at a family wedding. David and I attended. Eleanor and Chloe were absent, legally barred. I noticed the empty seats near the front. No one filled them. People came up to us, whispered support, said it was good the toxicity was handled. That peace looked good on us. At home that night, the air felt lighter. Eleanor wanted to clear me out. Instead, she built a cage around herself.